If you could give him a message right now, what would it be if he's watching?
RFK, I really appreciate what you're doing out there to keep us safe. I'm also doing my part in regards to helping prevent autism because I have autism myself. I've been diagnosed with Asperger's for many years and I've lived the trauma that it can cause, but I've learned to turn a curse into a blessing by sharing my information and by having my talents to help people with chronic health issues. But I'm working on a project that, if it is confirmed, it will be one of the most forward steps into prevention of autism through clinical testing with just a simple. The data is there.
Thank you to everybody who has subscribed recently. Don't think that we don't notice. We love the views, we love the comments, we love all of the new subscribers, and we love seeing that this show is growing. If you like this show, the best thing you can do to support it is hit that subscribe button. And if you want to take it one step further, please share any and all episodes. Thank you. Let's get on to the show. Welcome to Bear It All, the Kintsugi Chronicles, here on the I Am Not Okay channel, where we gather our broken pieces in search of gold. My name is John Bear.
And I'm Jeremy Palmer.
And today we have a very special guest, in-house, even all the way from Michigan, Mr. Shawn Bean. Welcome back.
Welcome.
Thank you guys for having me back again.
Oh, man. We can't wait to hear what you have been up to. So what are we talking about today, Shawn? What are some things on your mind?
Something on my mind is, how do we control inflammation at a relatively free cost?
Okay,
Wow.
Let's dig in. Here we go.
Well, first of all, we know that controlling inflammation is the name of the game. And what happens is that the immune system is the king. Mm-hmm. And when you keep the king nice and happy, the land is happy and free.
Interesting.
When the king is pissed off,
Yeah.
there's going to be hell to pay.
Okay.
So if you keep the immune system in balance and happy, the hormones, the neurotransmitters, and everything downstream tends to work in a nice harmony.
Yeah.
When that immune system is thrown out for multiple reasons, whether it's genetic, biochemical, or environmental, then there's hell to pay. And with the onset of the current situation with the pandemic, there has been a lot of immunological dysfunction going on as a result of this scenario. And one of those factors by which we have been deprived of is the natural own healing power of the sun.
Okay.
And one of those reasons why is the sun offers an amazing way to control inflammation.
How?
Well, a lot of people that have COVID and mold and Lyme have a deficiency in what is called MSH.
Okay.
Or melanotanin stimulating hormone.
Okay.
But the melanotanin stimulating hormone is known for turning us tan. But it has other amazing qualities a lot of people don't know about.
Okay.
Some of those qualities are that it helps to control histamine response, which is commonly synonymous with the terminology mast cell activation, which everybody is dealing with.
Yeah.
And when you look in the studies, it controls all the pro-inflammatory cytokines that, guess what causes? COVID.
Oh, so COVID caused it, the disease itself?
What happens is when the body is stressed, MSH rises to deal with the inflammation.
Okay.
And when we're dealing with a natural occurrence, what goes up
Must come down.
must come down.
Right.
And that's what we're typically seeing is we're seeing the push with the MSH and then the immediate drop. And when it starts to drop, people are having a harder time getting tan like they used to.
Interesting.
And when that happens, like when I first got sick with mold,
Yeah.
I looked like I was Addison's. Everybody was asking me, "Are you tanning? Are you tanning?" No, I'm not.
Yeah.
What happened was that was a sign that the MSH was going up. And that's why people with Addison's tend to look tan all the time. because of the MSH helping the inflammation.
Interesting.
Now what happens is, how long ever that stays up, I notice that it's harder for me to get tanner. And the way I kind of come on this is, I was visiting my mom one time, and I saw a picture. I'm like, oh, that's my brother Scott. She goes, no, Shawn, that's you. I was tan as I ever seen before.
Yeah, interesting.
And I was like, I don't get that tan anymore.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I do the same thing,
Right.
even with tanning beds. I'm like, okay, what's going on? So what happens is the MSH has the principle for controlling antihistamines, but it also starts to, it's not so an anti-aromatase. So anti-aromatase, in layman's terms, is men that are on hormone replacement therapy tend to have higher levels of estrogen.
Right.
Testosterone replacement?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha.
Because of the increase of the enzyme that converts testosterone to estrogen. And we do know that mold and COVID and Lyme and other chronic illnesses, as inflammation goes up, aromatase also goes up. So we're starting to see a lot of guys that are using hormone replacement therapy that are having estrogen problems.
Interesting.
Because they're pushing their levels past their physiological set point.
Right.
And then the body is going, I call it dark waters. You're moving into dark waters to where the body's like, what's going on? So you see the rise of testosterone, all of a sudden you see estrogen, and it shoots up. Once you get over, say, 600 to 800
Right.
total testosterone. Now, a person who is not on testosterone, we're starting to see males that have more female characteristics in general. And this is not just due to the aromatase inhibitor, but this is also due to the plastics and the microplastics that are in our food.
The environmental toxicity.
The
you talked
environmental
about.
toxicity, correct.
Yep.
And a lot of times this may not be shown in blood work. Because I have a lot of clients that their estrogen looks perfectly normal, but they're completely exhibiting characteristics of male estrogen dominance.
Interesting.
And
Okay.
that's because how the body is metabolizing it.
What are the symptoms? What's showing up?
We're seeing increased ability to lose weight. We're seeing an increase of fat to muscle ratio.
Yep.
We're starting to see what looks more like a female style pattern in regards to their emotions.
Oh, geez, yeah.
And we're starting to see a lower alpha males in our society.
Interesting.
And it's almost like I'm all for women power,
Sure.
but there has to be
balance.
There's a balance.
Yeah.
And trust me, the women taking over the medical field, I think it's the best thing that has happened.
Yeah.
Because they're more caring, they have that more
The mom.
naturally. Absolutely.
Yep.
If I was going to go to a medical doctor, I'd go to a female. I just find that even with nurses and stuff,
Yeah.
it's great that they're taking the role.
Okay.
And we're starting to see males take more on the lesser role in regards to, which is great. They're going to be more the father, not mother at home, but they'll take on the childbearing responsibility.
Yeah. Yep. Taking care of the child at home.
know some people who are in that.
starting to see that now, which is great because it causes a great balance. And then, as you have a kid,
Yeah.
you have higher levels of oxytocin.
Yep.
And you have a lower level of testosterone just naturally.
And that's mom and dad.
That's mom and dad.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah.
So there's the oxytocin goes up, all the binding, and we get a little bit more emotional times.
Sure.
So, but go back to the MSH. The MSH is a natural form of aromatase.
Okay.
So it helps to control the estrogen.
Interesting.
And it also does it through modulating a pro-inflammatory cytokine, interleukin 6. Interleukin 6 has been shown in clinical studies to help to control the aromatase activity. So instead of if you're on hormone replacement therapy, I don't advocate aromatase inhibitors, which would be like Arimidex or Aromacin.
Are they prescribed or something that people can kind of get as supplements?
They can be prescribed, they should be prescribed,
Should
but
be.
due to the fact that there's research labs out there,
Yeah.
that they're very accessible. And a lot of people don't know about the purities,
Right.
they don't know about the qualities, and they really don't know how to use them.
Right.
Because we've got a lot of athletes I work with that are enhanced, and I'm like, when I look at their chemistry, I'm like, your estrogen's in the ground, so you're overdosing on it.
When you say enhanced, performance enhanced?
Performance enhanced.
Sure. Okay, we'll just leave it there. Yep.
So that way, that's their choice.
Gotcha. Yep.
And I'm there just to help guide them, even
Of
though
course.
they're on TRT.
Right. Yeah.
What they consider TRT, I'm not going to judge.
No.
I'm just here to help them along their way.
Yes.
To make sure that they're doing things that are relatively sound and medically safe.
Gotcha.
Because I'm not a medical doctor.
No.
I don't give medical advice at
Correct.
all.
Okay.
I'm here to help educate and empower people
Yeah.
to be the best they can. And with the MSH, that also helps to heal the leaky gut.
Right.
It closes those gap junctions.
Yep.
So that a lot of time, the sun actually heals. The other thing the sun actually does is it detoxifies. It actually activates the lymphatic system
Right.
and also the bile. If I was to ask you a question, why do they put children born that are yellow underneath
Sunlight.
sun lamps? Breaks down bilirubin.
Right.
How many times have you been out in the sun when you're younger, and all of a sudden it's like you had to, you're on the beach or anything, you got to run and pee?
Oh. Okay.
That's the rise in the MSH, and the next step is called the antidiuretic hormone.
Okay. Okay.
The sun triggers the MSH, which triggers the antidiuretic hormone to cause you to pee. I mean, you could be just laying there on the beach, falling asleep. Next thing you know, you got to, Wildwood, you got to take the tram car to get to the bathroom and run
right.
as fast as you can.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's because what the sun does is the sun actually helps the body to detoxify.
How? What are simply, what are some of the mechanisms that the sun helps detoxify?
Number one is it provides a lot of our own natural substrates that people don't know.
Okay.
One of those substrates is nitric oxide.
Right.
We talked about that in the last one. Yep.
And, when you tan, you often get a male erection.
Yep.
And that's because of the boost of the nitric oxide.
Correct.
The other one is you get sulfate.
Okay.
People think that you get sulfate from your food. That's not necessarily true.
Okay.
The most valuable source is the sun. This is why oftentimes there's a secure place in Mexico where often we send kids with autism to. And by them going down there, staying 1 to 2 months,
Yeah.
their autism is gone
Gone?
or reduced significantly.
Okay. Wow. Now you just hit me with the thing there.
And the reason being is they're down in the blue zone. They're away from electromagnetic fields.
Right.
They're grounding. They're getting the sun, the nitric oxide. But also where they're at is it's the highest place of magnesium sulfate because salt water contains magnesium sulfate.
Interesting.
But there's only certain contents in Jersey Shore.
Sure.
And God knows what else in the water.
Well,
There's some history there, yeah.
There are some history there.
Don't take it personally, Jersey Shore people.
No.
I'm one of them.
Yeah, I know. I'm walking on the beaches and watching syringes when you're younger.
Yeah. That was a real thing.
Yeah, we've been there. All right.
That was a real thing. Yeah, we've been there.
So the point being is the content of the sulfate in the water up here is nowhere near what it is down
Interesting.
there.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
And also the magnesium. Because salt water is very healing for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Right? Because it contains a lot of minerals. And different areas in the world have different concentration of minerals in the water.
Right.
Whether it's from Mediterranean, the Greeks and Italians used to take baths all the time.
Right.
And let's go back to natural healing. Heliotherapy.
Helio?
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah.
What did the Greeks used to have? They used to have a sunroom.
And they sit in the sunroom.
And they sit in the sunroom.
Yeah. Interesting.
And they also worked out nakedly.
Yeah.
Right.
Movement
And-
was a thing.
And that was a thing.
Yeah.
Well, getting sunlight on your nuts has its advantages because
Yeah.
it actually increases testosterone.
Is that the Matthew McConaughey thing? Didn't his neighbor find him sunning
Probably.
all out in the nude? And
I mean, even-
interesting.
Hey, man.
Yeah.
He's just hanging out, you know what I'm saying?
I'm just
Literally.
doing my thing,
Doing my
man.
thing, man. Let them all hang, man.
Yeah, exactly.
But Red light therapy also has that advantage too.
Okay.
And from the sun, you get different bands and different spectrums. So
I was going to ask you about that.
This is why when I recommend my clients, if they have a red light lamp, you do red light in the morning, or you go out in the sun in the morning.
Okay, yeah.
Which you get the red light. And then you go out into the sun somewhere between 10 to 3, as long as you can hold it, stand it.
Okay.
And then what happens is the sunlight, the red light actually turns on the melanocyte stimulating hormone receptor sites in the skin.
Yep.
So that way the sunlight that you get gets used properly.
Receptors are open and
Receptors are open and ready to go.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Got it.
Interesting.
And then one of the things that I myself was a major healing with sun gazing.
Yeah.
So I've heard that been talked about. So how do you do that? Do you just wake up in the morning, go right outside, and
With kids and stuff, it's a little more challenging. But what I used to do was I used to get up, do my morning routine, and probably around 7:30 when things are calmed down, I go out to the deck. And then if the sun was coming off this angle, I'd stand. I wouldn't stare at directly at the sun.
Okay.
It would come off into the angle.
Got it.
And what happens is when that comes into the eyes, it goes through a process to actually increase dopamine.
Right.
So one of the factors that I look for when I'm looking at clients is how do you feel when the sun is out? Not out in the sun, but sitting next to a window.
Right.
Because that would be indication that it's the sunlight coming into the eye that is the trigger rather than being on the skin. And the thing that I found out is I have an analogy that I use. It's kind of like the Terminator coming from, red to awakening. And that's how a lot of people feel. I talked to a woman last night. I said, how do you try to get the sun? She goes, Shawn, when I'm in the kitchen and stuff, I'm going like this, trying to get
some extra rays.
Try to get some rays. And she said, it makes the world of a difference.
Yeah.
And that won't increase MSH, but it's the sunlight on your skin. But that will actually activate the dopamine receptors in the skin. And the other thing it does, a lot of people don't know about, vitamin A, real name is retinol.
Right.
Interesting.
So when the sun comes through, it goes through the receptor sites called RXR, which is retin receptors. So you can actually theoretically get vitamin A from the sun.
And not have to supplement or eat it or anything, yeah.
To some degree.
To some degree, we'll say.
Okay.
How long would you recommend people to sun gaze if they're able? I've heard 5, 10 minutes, 15 maybe, but is there a recommendation?
It really depends upon how much depleted you are.
Sure.
When I used to go out, I used to do it morning and at nighttime.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I used to do where I lived, I used to go walk around and it would be right at dusk or after dusk.
Got it.
Back then, we had dial-up, so it's like, screw the internet.
Right.
I'm like, and you don't have phones or anything.
Right.
And, I think I had my, where you put the MP3 player on.
Right.
Yeah.
But I didn't have, my iPhone didn't do that at that time.
Got it.
So I was just listening to music
Okay.
as I walked around and listened to the crickets and stuff. And when I went down, I would definitely go to sleep. And sleep very well because I wasn't stimulated by electromagnetic fields.
Right.
Or I would just go walk around and just listen to podcast after podcast. And I would be there for like an hour.
Okay.
And I would time it so that I'd be maybe an hour. So sometimes I get into a podcast and just keep going around and around.
Right.
Because it was actually relaxing. And I would do it during the summertime when it was down. Plus where I lived at the time, there was no lights. So it was like you didn't have all these extra
artificial light,
artificial lights.
Right. Interesting.
So I found that the sun gazing combined with that were two changes that made a huge part. And even during the wintertime, what I would do is I would go and get in my car, park it on the side, roll the window down, turn the heater on, and just sit there like this and just have it coming off my eyes. And every time I did that, it felt better and better.
Yeah,
Back then, gas was only like $1.99.
Right. Yeah.
So, so you could do that.
Sure.
And I'd roll the window down and just sit and listen to radio.
Yeah.
It was very, very relaxing because when you're chronically ill like that, you have all the time in the world.
Right.
So I was really putting forth effort
To get well. Yeah.
to get well, and I was really doing what it took to do. Because when I first got exposed to mold, it was like I was total amnesia, and I felt like I had total amnesia for 3.5 hours.
How long ago was that now that you got exposed? Like 15 years?
That was about 20 years ago.
20 years ago. Okay.
That was the first exposure. Second exposure was about 4 or 5 years ago.
Oh, geez. Right before COVID or like during it?
During it.
Oh, man. Okay. So
it was, but the thing was, is I know there's theories about shedding, but what happened was my mom came over, and as soon as she opened the door, something took like a baseball bat and smacked it across my head. And like within 2 hours, I was down on the couch. And then the next day, my temperature shot to 103. And I was shaking. I had full Parkinsonian symptoms. And my memory was all messed up. I'm like, man, this feels like mold. But it couldn't have been. So we are now coming to the conclusion that shedding may actually be real to some degree.
Talk a little bit about shedding. What is shedding for those that might not know?
Shedding is was a conspiracy theory that where once you got the vaccination, that you would have the virus, so the immune system could respond, and then when you got the virus, that person was at high risk of exposure.
Okay.
Or spreading it.
Sure. Contagious, yeah.
Contagious is the word.
Yep.
And now we're starting to accept that fact. In scientific literature now, they're starting to say it. So all the conspiracy theories are now starting to become
being proven.
Yeah,
interesting.
Conspiracy possibilities.
Exactly.
Interesting.
Right.
That's your avenue there, sir.
Well, when it ceases to be a theory anymore and it has some level of
validity,
validity, it becomes a conspiracy possibility and then becomes a conspiracy actuality at that point in time. Like that's kind of the road that it takes.
There's the spectrum or the continuum. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right, very cool. So everybody, did you hear what I heard there? What I heard was you should get up in the morning and listen to this podcast while you're watching the sun. And then in the evening, you should put the podcast back on and walk around your block and listen to us while you're getting your sun. That's what I heard. Yeah, that's awesome.
Well, what happens is red light is strongest at dawn and dusk.
Yeah.
And that's the UV index, yeah?
Exactly.
Okay. And we humans do better with red light, need more red light.
Red light is anti-inflammatory.
Anti-inflammatory.
And it's just one of the many spectrums of the sunlight itself.
And a lamp could sort of replace that or sort of assist?
Absolutely.
Okay.
There's different lamps out there.
Sure.
The one that I use is a specific one.
Yeah.
And what it does is you do it for 10 or 15 minutes.
Okay.
And what it does is it helps lower inflammation. And also, if people have gut microbiome problems, you can actually put the lamp here and actually reduces the...
Right on the belly.
Yeah, 6 inches from the belly. And what it does is it actually helps to regenerate the microbiome
so
itself.
It has a dual purpose.
It has a dual purpose.
That's interesting.
And then if you have inflammation or if you have Hashimoto's, you put it next to your thyroid, and it actually helps to reduce the antibodies. And some people that I've worked with who have used this combined with other things, such as like black seed oil combined with this, have actually been able to get off their thyroid medication.
Interesting.
Because the fact is, when you lower the antibodies, then the thyroid can actually work, and and the antibodies are not preventing it from working. So if you lower the inflammation, your thyroid has the potential to come back on. Because we know that once you correct the autoimmune disorder, it's like your thyroid the body begins to balance itself and has a possibility or probability of actually getting off a lot of medications.
There's a word I hear a lot is thyroid. Could you tell people what is the thyroid and why would it go up or down or off?
First of all, when you're looking at thyroid, it's the master gland for metabolism.
Okay. Master gland for metabolism.
It also controls neurotransmitters. It controls your gut. It controls your gallbladder.
And that's in your neck here?
That's in your neck.
Got it.
Here.
And a lot of people now are starting to have thyroid antibodies, which will be what thyroid antibodies are is they are produced when the immune system's out of balance and they start attacking your thyroid. And if the antibody gets too big, you have to use supplemental thyroid traditionally.
To get the levels of thyroid output you would normally have?
Exactly.
Okay.
And then to get the antibodies down.
Interesting.
But if you are selenium deficient,
Yeah. Selenium?
selenium.
Yeah.
Or which you can get from Brazil nuts.
I was gonna just say
you
that.
told me
Eat
to
those
double up.
Brazil nuts.
Yeah.
Eat those Brazil
He
nuts.
told me to start eating twice.
Yeah,
After our
he's got
thing,
'em,
he's
yeah.
like, John, eat twice a day. And I was like, okay.
Yeah, eat twice a day.
Eat those Brazil nuts, people.
And when the antibodies start coming down, then the thyroid has a chance to actually start working again.
Mm-hmm.
And selenium is an immune system modulator.
Okay.
It also helps to reduce mercury in the system. And it also works with vitamin E as an antioxidant in the system. It also helps in detoxification
Yeah.
because it helps to recycle the master antioxidant glutathione. Because when glutathione, a lot of my clients take glutathione, but it's going to the bad form versus the good form because there's two forms. And when I test, which I don't test no more, 95% of the people are coming back too much of the bad, not enough of the good. Which actually matches the microbiome, which matches the gut flora and microbiome itself.
Okay, so now we're in this, like you've talked about gut microbiome too, and we know that that's something that's important, but I know a lot of people don't even really understand like the health of their gut or what is the microbiome? Is that like what your intestines, what's inside there, or?
The microbiome is just not the gut intestines. It's your nasal intestines. It's also, for women, it's also the vaginal terrain.
Interesting, okay.
So a lot of times when women have vaginal problems, they get what's called translocation. Translocation is the organisms from here go down.
They like literally shift.
They
down.
shift,
Oh,
exactly.
geez. Oh.
So oftentimes if a woman has a yeast infection in her gut, it could express in the vaginal area.
And is that where it's like a prolapse or something that comes out like that? Or not,
No,
not quite that?
it's not.
It just moves.
It just travels.
Interesting.
And guys that have prostate problems, the prostate is right next to
Yeah.
Yeah.
the gut, and then they can translocate right, because I had a lot of guys that had bad guts, prostatitis, and once I fixed the gut, the inflammation of the prostate went down.
Interesting.
Okay.
Because the organisms that were causing the infection in the prostate were actually coming from the gut,
Right.
because it's due to the location.
Sure.
Yeah.
And we see that in the microbiome, that you have good bacteria and bad bacteria. Now, when you're born with a strong immune system. Back in many, many moons ago.
Yeah.
Now, kids a day, different story.
Sure.
But what happens is you're born with 80% or higher good bacteria to 20% or bad bacteria or less.
Okay.
Now, what we're seeing the kids born just the opposite.
Almost 80 bad, 20 good, we'll say.
Exactly.
And is that because of the parent? Like the parents, that's like a downstream?
That's because of the parents. Because the mother's bacteria, good and bad, is passed on to the child.
Yep. We talked a little
Every
bit.
piece of it. Yeah.
And this is why I always advocate people, if you want to have kids, you have to start prepping 6 months to a year ahead of time now. You've got to get your gut microbiome in check, because it's not shaming, but the thing is if the person has an altered microbiome, that child is going to be at a much higher risk of neurological problems,
Yeah.
chronic illnesses,
Yeah.
type 2 diabetes.
Yeah.
And so then they're going to end up with antibiotics,
Yep.
which are going to weaken the system more. So I always advocate, do the microbiome test. Do simple testing. Check. Because there could be heavy metals, there could be mycotoxins, there could be a lot of things.
Sure.
And a lot of that is passed on to the child from the mother, even if it's protected through transfer.
Yeah.
So advocating for the gut microbiome should be top priority in traditional medicine.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, it's not.
Right.
And my main thing is to get the message out there.
Yeah.
If you want to have kids, make sure that your gut microbiome is in check, because what that's going to do is going to give them a leg up. Now, a lot of women are getting cesarean sections.
Yeah.
And when you get a cesarean section, what happens is that child loses the first pass of the immune system. So they're already at a
Compromise. Yeah.
compromised position before they even come into the world.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then also the stress of that mother maybe in front of electromagnetic fields or in an abusive relationship.
Yep.
This is all neurologically passed on to the child.
Right.
Wow.
So
Environmental stress from all angles.
exactly, and it's just going to continue to get worse and worse as time goes on. But we're working on that from a political standpoint currently,
Yeah.
and we're always going to be like, hope for the best is all we can say,
Okay.
because everything, we don't know what's in store for us yet.
Do you recommend, or do you have something top of mind that if someone was watching this and they were like, hey, I want to get my gut microbiome checked, like what's a good avenue to approach that from?
I have looked at $600 test, $1,000 test. It all goes back to show me what the good bacteria look like. Because there's so many practitioners that have this idea of kill, kill, kill.
Right.
And what that basically means is you're trying to wipe out the pathogens, but you're also going to wipe out the good
Everything
bacteria.
else in
Everything
there
else.
too, yeah.
So my philosophy is now what we're starting to see is why is the microbiome shifting?
Right.
The microbiome is trying to compensate for the immune system imbalances because of what's being thrown at us from the environmental side, genetic side, so forth. So the body is an amazing system of negative feedback loops. And it's only doing what it's supposed to be doing.
Right.
So what happens a lot of times is the body may look what we call pathogenic, which is not a good thing.
Right.
But in reality, when you look at what it's trying to tell us, what happens is the body's screaming for help. The problem is people aren't listening.
Yeah.
Medicine is not listening. Functional medicine is not listening. Okay? So what I've discovered is in all the cases I worked with so far, barely any do I use kill mode.
Right.
Because if you have a hydrogen sulfide producing bacteria, basically what that means is your body's producing hydrogen sulfide as a protective mechanism because it's not getting what it needs from the diet,
Right.
or genetically you don't have the ability to make something.
Right.
What happens is hydrogen sulfide goes to another conversion to sulfite.
Right. Okay.
And then what happens due to molybdenum deficiency, which is a trace mineral that helps you break down alcohol, but it also gets depleted in mold, fungus, and alcohol, and also glyphosates. So if you're deficient in that, what happens is sulfite builds up, and you don't get to the end product that's called sulfate, which you get from the sun.
Comes back around.
And then with
source.
the sun, because I know that when my kids don't get enough sulfate and have too much imbalances in other areas, they start to act up a little bit more. Because I'll ask them, and especially during the wintertime, I'll ask them, have they gone outside?
Right.
They're like, no.
Why would I do that? It's cold. It's winter.
It's wintertime, it's that cold, but you have all the gear and stuff, but the teachers don't want to take them out
Right.
for whatever reason. They have their reasons. But the point being is on the flip side, you'll notice that there's an increase of anxiety
Right.
or anxiousness or combativeness
Seasonal affective disorder, right?
to some degree.
Means I don't get out in the sun.
But what I've discovered is through my own journey, one time I was at their party and I had too much of the wrong food to eat, which gets detoxified through the sulfation pathway, which uses sulfate. Well, what happened was I had too much, and when I went out to the sun, I had a detox reaction because the sun started detoxing what it was, the sulfate was taking care of too much stuff I ate.
Okay.
And I got tired and I got very lethargic. So what happens is sulfate is necessary for production of the master hormone glutathione.
Okay. You've talked
And sulfate is also needed for insulin
about to regulate it.
to regulate it and actually manufacture it.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Because insulin is sulfur-based. Also, sulfate is needed for detoxification of your, what we call bile acids.
Okay.
Bile acids are what pulls the junk out of your tissue,
Okay.
your gut.
Yep.
It's a cleaner, or what we call a chelator.
Right.
It pulls it out
Yep.
and takes it out. Well, what happens is if you have what we call toxic bile,
Okay.
which is it pulls it out, but it's not bounded to get it out properly,
Right.
it becomes toxic.
And it expresses. Yeah.
And then it expresses and it
Yeah.
recirculates back.
Pulls it, yeah.
Then it recirculates back. I'm like, I can't get it out through here. So it goes back through the liver again. And we call that toxic bile. Because you hear people that have gallbladder taken out. Okay? And when you have your gallbladder out, that process does not work as much. So in that standpoint, a gastroenterologist won't tell you to take ox bile or to take higher dosages of lipase. Now, what we're starting to see is in the gut microbiome with hydrogen sulfide, we're starting to see people that are biochemically walking alcoholics.
Yeah.
Interesting.
You've said that before.
And we're going into this, and the analogy is you don't have to drink alcohol, you become the bar.
Wow.
You're producing it on that level. Interesting.
Producing on that
Some
level.
people might be excited by that, I think.
Well, they're walking around in drunken state, and a lot of people that have quote brain fog.
Right.
You give them a little bit of molybdenum that's chewable.
Yep.
Clears right up. We use that for a hangover remedy.
Right.
When people have a hangover remedy, I give them high doses of. We usually carry around molybdenum. Take 1 to 2 grams of that, and you're able to walk out the bar ready to drive.
Right.
I met a guy. He was so
Don't do that.
don't do that face. And he's like, so we reached into the pocket. We gave him, he came back 30 minutes later, just like nothing.
What'd you give me? Yeah.
Pretty much. It
Yeah.
cleared it right him up. So everybody's body has a biochemical individuality
Yes.
Right, okay.
in regards to how the body is able to detoxify.
It's like their own thumbprint for their body, sort of, something like that.
Well, it's kind of like your whole hardwiring.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, gotcha.
And what happens is with the environmental and stress, you get viruses put on your hard drive. Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
And when that virus gets on the hard drive, it doesn't act like it was pre-programmed to do.
Correct. Yep.
And also the analogy is there's a switchboard. And what happens is when you get stressed, some of those switches might flick. Some of them are not so good switches. And this is where you increase cancer gene expression. This is where you increase the neurological issues that mommy and daddy, or mommy may have been neurologically imbalanced,
Yeah.
whether from depression, anxiety.
Sure.
So now you're starting to see increase of neurological inflammation, which is like depression, anxiety. So what do? You go to the doctor and you get an antidepressant, which in some situations is necessary.
Okay.
But the problem is that becomes a long-term Band-Aid
Yes.
Right.
rather than looking at the core source of why this happened. Like last night, I met this poor woman who was, when I looked at her history, I'm like, do you understand that they were medicating you 15 years for potential mold toxicity? And it didn't dawn on her, and I'm like, and I started to explain to her, I'm like, it's because of what you told me.
Yeah. Right.
Your relative, was a hoarder, and she mentioned about having stains on the stains and scrubbing mold off the. So
There you go.
there you go.
Yes.
It's not Mr. Mold everything. It's the idea that you look at the clinical history. If it's in the presentation, then that's what you have to go with.
Okay.
Now, she said, I live in a clean house and blah, blah, blah.
Sure.
Sure. But no, she identified that not just the probability was there, it is there. And now what we're doing is we're taking the immunolytic plates in the house.
Yeah.
And it's a small house. And putting it, because she's like, well, how do I get the white mold off the walls? I'm like, that right there. Or she's like, there's black spots. I'm like, yeah, so we'll take those plates, open them up, and put them around the house, and cap them, put them into a dark spot, And if they come back with a bunch of little dots, you're dealing with something.
Right.
Right.
Okay? Then send those off.
Yeah.
And not this way. She's like, well, do I need a mold inspector? I'm like, get the data first.
Right.
Before spending crazy amounts of money.
Sure.
Because I had one person, do I need a mold inspector? Nope.
So you're saying start at step one?
Exactly. Start at step one.
I know.
You know, because we found the mold, we sent it in, the mold matched his blood testing results from the lab, and then he called the mold inspector in, and it was confirmed. Boom.
Right.
So he had 3 different differentials.
Yeah.
So that way it was confirmed hardcore. And also by working, even when he was in the mold, we were able to get him to a happy place. And with that being said, you know, I have a lot of clients that are up in Canada. And I'm like, I've been to this mold specialist, or I've been to this functional medicine doctor, this functional medicine doctor, or this specialist. I said, go to the tanning bed 3 days a week for 5 to 6 minutes. We're not doing the tan. We're going to stimulate your natural production of melanocyte stimulating hormone. 3 weeks later, they came back, and the poor girl, they $60,000, $100,000. Like, I'm 60% better. I say, yeah, you were sunlight deficient because you need the MSH actually helps to get rid of the mold because it protects the body from the mold. So the mold knows that if you lower it, it's going to have a better foothold.
And it won't express, like you told me. Like it has a less chance of expressing
It has
itself.
less chance of
less
expressing.
chance, we'll say. Right. Okay. Interesting. So you touched on something there. We talked a little bit about kind of like functional alcoholic almost, and due to like the inflammation that's making its way into the liver. Something that I've heard that's come up recently, the importance of the liver sulfate pathways. Does that touch in that area? Like where does that come in with the fatty liver syndrome and kind of the functional alcohol?
It gets really interesting now. What happens is the hydrogen sulfide bacteria, one of those hydrogen sulfide bacteria is an organism called Biophilia wadsworthia. And what that does is that increases during fat malabsorption.
Okay.
And we do know that fat malabsorption actually increases the likelihood of non-alcoholic fatty liver.
Nutritional fats, like fats you would eat, they're not being absorbed.
Correct.
Gotcha.
But the thing is because of that biophilia there, it doesn't matter what your diet is. Your microbiome takes on the chemistry of a non-alcoholic fatty liver. So this is going underneath the radar.
Gotcha, yeah.
Big time.
Yeah.
And one of the secrets for me to getting people with COVID better is I treat them as an alcoholic from a biochemical standpoint.
Okay.
Because the main process by which is one of the triggers is what's we call the phenols. And sulfation detoxifies phenols.
Okay.
So what happens is a lot of people have too much of that in their diet, or their body's producing too much of it from their own microbiome.
Okay.
But the mechanism by that happens is also antifungal. So your body's raising up the bacteria that produce the phenolinic acid,
Okay.
okay,
Yeah.
to take care of the fungus, but in the process, your body can't break down the phenols that are excessive. So you get a phenol overload, then that overloads the sulfation pathway. And you always hear about methylation.
Okay.
Yeah.
My philosophy with methylation, I was one of the first ones to put my foot down and say, stop playing with the methylation. You want to support it. You don't want to put the foot on the gas pedal. You have to support the sulfation pathway first. The methylation we're seeing more upregulation of methylation versus downregulation, because we're seeing a decrease in sulfation. When sulfation goes down, methylation goes up.
Okay.
So there's a seesaw.
So if sulfation goes up, the other will go down.
Correct.
Okay.
Or if you correct the sulfation,
Right.
methylation balance itself.
Gotcha.
So it's a balancing game. And when I start doing the Epsom salts and get people out into the sun and using other different modalities,
Yeah.
that pathway opens up. They're able to go back to having a little more that pathway that gets blocked because of overload of the phenols, which also in the phenol pathway, there's also what's called salicylates. Salicylates are apples or aspirin, salicylic acid. Aspirin is a salicylate.
Okay.
One of my clients, who's a medical doctor, she actually had an anaphylactic shock from taking an aspirin because her pathway was so blocked that it caused a reaction to her. And that's how we know that when we opened up her pathway, that she could start to handle more of the phenols because her body was doing the same thing.
Yep.
She was exposed to mold. Her body raises up its own natural production to try to counter it, and they get backlogged as a result. So when you work on the sulfation pathway, that also goes through the histamine pathway. The histamines also, the sulfation detoxifies histamines.
Okay.
So a lot of people that have mast cell activation or
Right.
allergies
Oh.
in general,
Yeah.
when you work on the sulfation pathway and get that balance, a lot of those allergies become
Clear up a little bit or get
clear
better.
up a little
Yeah.
bit. Exactly. And also working on the sulfation pathway helps the microbiome, which also helps to detoxify the histamines, which helps to detoxify the mycotoxins, which detoxifies, which are the byproducts of fungus and mold, and also help to take out oxalates and also glyphosates, because a lot of the coffee that we drink is extremely high in mycotoxins, potentially glyphosates. I'm guilty. I like to go to Starbucks every once in a while.
Hey,
But hey, if you have a problem, a genetic issue, and you have a you want to be cautious of the type of coffee that you take because you could be very sensitive to it.
Interesting.
And the other factor is a lot of people don't know that where I found mold itself is in your coffee container that you don't clean.
Oh, like
Right?
what you
Just
drink
keep
out
filling
of.
it up again.
Exactly.
Got it.
I found that multiple times.
Interesting.
Underneath the lid.
Yes. Yeah, I have a cup here, and I would pull it off, but I'm relentless about like cleaning it all the time because it just bothers me. But that's not for any other reason than it just bothers me.
But the thing is people, simple changes like that can make a huge difference.
Right.
Or some of the areas of mold that we see exposures could be from laundry.
right.
How so?
Top loaders versus front loaders. Because what happens is on the top loader, you'll know it's open. A lot of people slam after they do the they'll keep their clothes in there or they won't air it out. Just by airing it out, you're reducing the chances of mold.
Interesting. Got it.
Okay?
Yep.
So you're more probability to have mold on a front loader than a top loader.
Wow. Oh, I did. Okay.
Yes.
I got a front
I still
loader.
got a top loader.
All right. I got to work
You're
on
good
that.
to go.
I'm
I
still
got to work on that.
still
Damn.
running that 20-year-old top loader.
Exactly.
So, Shawn, you've touched on something that's super important. We've talked about sulfates and the sulfation pathways now, and based on what you're telling me, it sounds like that might be the most important or like the ground zero place to start looking. And is it as simple as if you're not feeling well, start getting sun, change the sulfation pathways, and that will show you what is actually under the hood?
Correct.
Okay, interesting.
And another way you can work on sulfation is taking Epsom salt baths.
Right.
Okay, right.
Because a lot of athletes take Epsom salt baths and it reduces inflammation like that.
Yeah.
Because it's not just, it is magnesium, but you're getting more sulfate in the system.
Got it.
And sulfate accelerates the healing process because it helps with also collagen too.
Would a magnesium supplement be similar or not really? Because it's not absorbed the same.
Well, the thing about that is there's different forms of magnesium.
Sure.
In regards to mechanisms of what they're using.
Some are topical.
Some are topical,
yeah.
some are oral, sometimes I'll use one for like AFib, which would be like magnesium taurate versus a magnesium glycinate versus magnesium citrate. So each of the amino acid chelators have a different function.
Got it.
And in that way, it's like a person who's anxious but don't have problems with oxalates, I'll give magnesium glycinate before going to bed. Because glycine can act as a stabilizer for the inhibitory, where slows down your
That's
brain.
interesting.
Yeah.
Okay? Other people are doing magnesium malate that the doctors don't tell them about. Oh, it's magnesium, but it's magnesium malate. Malate is to go into the Krebs cycle. So it gives you energy. So if you take a magnesium malate before bed, you're actually potentially
Yeah, bouncing off the walls a little.
bouncing off the walls.
Interesting.
So I have them shift from magnesium malate
to glycinate.
to glycinate.
Got it.
Or to sprays.
Yeah, got it. Okay. Actually, you have me on the spray. Yeah, you told me about that, and I started that. Yep.
Yeah, and it really works very well, and this reduces a lot of the need for supplementation.
I'm going to ask because I've used magnesium threonate. Any issues there?
No, actually, that really depends upon the person.
Got it.
Because normally magnesium threonate should be taken before bedtime.
It should.
That's where it tends to be.
Yeah, because that's when I take it, and I notice a difference when I don't. So
exactly.
Yeah.
And that's to reduce the inflammation of the brain.
Interesting.
Helps
Yeah.
with brain inflammation.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
And some supplement companies advocate it in the morning because of the concentration.
Mm-hmm.
But I have found that it works like magnesium threonate, apigenin.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Combined with, I think there's one that I found that has magnesium threonate, magnesium glycinate, and magnesium taurate in it.
Oh.
So it
okay.
has all three blends in it.
Yeah.
And if that person works with that, great.
Interesting. Okay.
But I can't take magnesium glycinate because I have an oxalate problem.
Oh.
Because of my microbiome being out of balance.
Got it.
And also other factors that I've been dealing with.
Okay.
And also I have but I have a genetic disorder called phenylsulfotransferase pathway, which a lot of autistic kids have. So we actually have a buildup of serotonin, and we can't get rid of it. So then our dopamine levels go low.
Yeah. Okay.
Because it's not just the idea of highs or low. You could still be normal serotonin, but it's the ratio between the serotonin and dopamine that becomes problematic. That's why when I drink milk, I'll go into a catatonic state because my serotonin shoots to the roof and my dopamine goes, and I'm sitting like I'm all doped, you know, slobbering and stuff, and rocking back and forth.
Right.
That's a catatonic state because of the serotonin going so high. I can't break it down. So then the dopamine goes low, and you just become a zombie. But with the serotonin, a lot of people don't know is that same pathway by which serotonin is produced is the same pathway by which the mechanism that everybody is crazing about now is called NAD.
Right. NAD, okay. Which is?
That is the active form of niacin that goes into the mitochondrion.
Okay.
And it's needed for cellular energy. It's also, as we get older, things drop.
Yeah.
ATP, NAD, glutathione, nitric oxide are the main ones that start to drop.
Okay.
In regards, and once you start replenishing them,
Right.
you actually slow the aging process down. And this is where intermittent fasting comes in. Because intermittent fasting raises a lot of those levels.
Interesting.
It raises NAD. It raises growth hormone.
Yeah, HGH.
HGH.
Yep.
It also, people that have the ability to make cortisol, I feel so good fasted. Well, first of all, you have no toxins coming in, and second of all, it raises your cortisol. Now, people don't have the ability to raise cortisol. They'll feel crappy in a fasted state. So that tells me that you have a little more adrenal work to do.
Interesting. Okay.
Or you lack the building blocks to make the adrenals.
Interesting.
But, when you start intermittent fasting, there's different philosophies about that.
Sure.
But the thing is it goes into a mechanism called autophagy.
Yep.
Right.
Which clears out the cellular debris and reduces what we know as the zombie cells, which are cells that carry misinformation to the next cell.
Talk about that just a tiny bit, like intermittent fasting. If you were to say, "Hey, I think this is something worthwhile to do," how might people look at adding that in? Just kind of skip breakfast and have like a 4 to 8 hour window in the afternoon where they eat, or that's the general recommendation.
The general recommendation by what I do is I like. If I was bodybuilding again,
right? Yeah, let's be curious.
If I was bodybuilding again, I would do 3 meals a day.
When would you eat them?
I would have them somewhere. Actually, I did this for contests, and I got in the best shape of my life. And I didn't realize it 20 years ago. My trainer was Craig Bach, who was Mr. USA at the time at NABA. And he was like, yeah. And I did it accidentally because I would get up in the morning, have my thermogenics, and then go to train, go do my cardio, take my branch chains, and then fart around in the gym, pose or whatever. Right. And it wouldn't be like till 10 o'clock.
That you start eating.
That I start eating. And then I still get my 4 meals in, but I would stop at like 6, 7 o'clock.
Got it.
That's actually my program, almost exactly.
Now it's like, as bodybuilders and stuff, you can train your body to take on a certain caloric intake. Because even when I was 48 years old, I was doing 1,500 calories. But I maintained a 215 pounds, 8% body fat. And what it was I had my body trained to utilize exactly what I needed because I didn't do cardio.
Got it.
I trained heavy. I had a very sedentary job. I wasn't up running around. So 1,500 calories was enough for me.
Got it.
But it kept my body at that point to where it building muscle. But there were other things I did outside, like branched chain amino acids outside of the window and in between meals to keep it more anabolic.
Got it.
You know, there are techniques that I'm utilizing now with people with intermittent fasting that I'm experimenting with to try to increase their nutritional value by decreasing the actual caloric intake that they have. And by doing so, we should be able to be in a fasted state, but also increase our anabolism. We did this with an ultramarathoner. We took all she lived on. Well, first of all, with ultramarathoners, they don't want to take a crap. So what we did was
This podcast is sponsored by Bare Knuckle Strength. If you're ready and willing to start getting rid of and or release your pain, one of the best ways that we have found to start doing that is self-myofascial release. We have created a program here at Bare Knuckle Strength. You can get that right now for free by going to www.bareknucklestrength.com/release. www.bareknucklestrength.com/RELEASE. Release. We look forward to seeing you on the inside. Be well.
in order to get her to a certain standpoint, she was on like perfect aminos, which was the ones that are the MAPS aminos, which are from the studies from over in Italy, that they have the 8 essential amino acids in the proper form based upon the human genome, 45 years ago.
Yeah.
So she was taking like 8 scoops of this a day. Oof. But it was giving her energy.
Right.
And that way it's like she wasn't, out of breath.
Yeah.
And she went on, did 75 miles. And she was still super lean.
Wow.
But she couldn't, she can go to the bathroom for a couple of days.
Yeah.
But the thing is that's what you have to do with ultramarathoners. You can't just stop and take a dump and
the middle of the woods.
You can't stop and just drop a deuce and
keep going.
Now
some of them, they just do it on the run, don't they? Or,
I have heard.
If they can,
I have heard
right?
That one, yeah.
That's out of my pay rate there,
Fair
guys.
enough. So we've touched on a lot there, and
A lot.
A whole lot. So how does that tie into the next question that I would have? So I'm coming at you, Shawn, from more the angle of like, here's where a lot of fitness and health professionals are talking about these things, and I want to understand from your perspective. So the next one that people seem to be talking a lot about, if our sulfate pathways are off, or really if like our immune system seems to be compromised, there's the TH1 to TH2, there's like a shift now that's been happening. So what does that mean?
Basically what happens there is we have been pre-programmed to take high dosages of vitamin D.
Like orally, not just from the sun.
Exactly.
Got it.
When you take oral vitamin D, it changes the whole pharmacokinetics of it. Meaning, if you go out into the sun, you don't have to worry about your calcium intake. When you take oral vitamin D, it signals the body, I need calcium. And if you don't have calcium, guess where it's going to pull it? Teeth, bones, pancreas, at last resort. I have a client that actually have pancreatitis that we actually link back to this excessive vitamin D, because you need calcium to trigger the mechanism inside to release the pancreatic enzymes.
Wild. Okay.
And calcium is also needed for the nicotinic receptor sites, which are common in long COVID, but everybody's been dairy-free. Or they tell you to go dairy-free, but they don't tell you to put calcium back into the diet. And also then we start taking caffeine. Caffeine will wipe calcium out of your diet too.
Okay.
Then there's advocates saying that calcium's bad for you. Okay? Calcium needs to be balanced with other minerals, even if it's a 1-to-1 ratio. And calcium is needed to help people lose fat, because the study, when you combine yogurt with, yogurt help you lose weight because what calcium does is calcium pushes the fat through the system. Okay? That's why they lose weight.
That's why I love yogurt.
Exactly.
Stay lean.
Stay lean. Exactly. Well, my favorite meal was cottage cheese and whey protein with the pineapple.
Interesting.
You know?
Yeah.
During bodybuilding, it was like the perfect meal. And maybe throw some flaxseed oil, which I know now is bad for you.
Flaxseed oil inherently, just itself?
Well, it oxidizes so fast.
Got it.
Oxidation. We didn't know it back then.
Sure. Right.
We'd have a bottle for like 6 months.
Right. It has to be like refrigerated at a specific temperature,
well,
like all that stuff.
One of my friends, competitor bodybuilder, he knows who he is. He was sitting there. I was at the gym one day. He's just sitting there squirting this stuff. I'm like, Dave. I'm like, where'd you pick that up from? He goes, on top of the counter. I said, how long has it been out? 3 months out of there. And then he wondered why his gut looked like he was pregnant.
Right.
I said, you're creating oxidative stress for crying out loud.
Right.
And as soon as he stopped it, he's like, wow, that makes
gut went
sense. My gut went down. Exactly. Because he's like, because he was an old-time bodybuilder, so he lived on the 6 meals. And just didn't believe in fats and stuff.
Interesting.
So he started adding fat, and he's like, I'm like, what are you getting your fat from? He's like, up there. I'm like,
up there.
This bottle.
just that bottle. Because they had it on the refrigerator, and he actually reached on top of the refrigerator to get it down, because that's where he used to store everything.
Wild.
So the point being is that when we're looking at TH2, people are so, vitamin D, when we just have to get it from. And the other mechanism is we're so focused on, when looking at blood tests, getting it up to the upper level. That's not necessarily true, because there's so many different pathways of vitamin D. There's like 50 different metabolites of vitamin D that we know of as of now.
Okay.
Where vitamin D can go.
Yep.
Right.
So vitamin 25 is just the stored form. The active form is the 125. So sometimes we're starting to see, low 25 and high 125, and that's usually an indication of the balance with TH2 shift. And that's very common in a lot of people that have immunological problems. And when you're more in a TH2 dominant, we're in a TH2 dominant society, which means our immune systems are overactive. So TH2 dominant is going to lead more into the autoimmune disorders.
Got it.
That we're seeing.
There's a lot of that now. Yeah.
There you go. And the more vitamin D you take, the more potentiating you're moving into that direction. If you don't balance it out with K2. And the other thing about K2
Talk to me about that.
is MK7. In old, ancient, we would get, if you did 5,000 IUs of vitamin D, you would need 1,000 micrograms to balance it out.
Vitamin K.
Of vitamin K2.
K2. Got it. Yeah.
So I usually start out my people between 200 to 300 micrograms because the more vitamin D they take, the ratio, I'm doing 10,000 IUs of vitamin D, but then they're doing like 100 micrograms of K2, which is, then
enough,
the thing is, doing vitamin D, it works for you, great.
Sure.
But you don't want to take vitamin D and vitamin K at the same time because they compete. Fat-soluble vitamins compete for the same receptor inside the intestinal tract.
Interesting.
This is why I use topical vitamin E sometimes because of the fact it bypasses that. If we have gut issues, it bypasses that.
Okay.
Very interesting.
Now I'm starting to use topical vitamin D.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And using topical vitamin D gives you all the same benefits of the sun, then doesn't affect the same mechanisms within the calcium issue.
So if people aren't getting enough sun and or can have or want to take a supplement, you would suggest topical vitamin D versus
Absolutely.
oral.
Absolutely.
Got it. Okay. Interesting.
And you really don't need to worry about your levels because when you go topically, it doesn't matter because it can go down different pathways. So you always go by response. Like I have a lot of people that are switching and they're like, I feel so much better. I said, yeah, it's like sunshine in the bottle.
Yeah.
Because when it comes through your skin, it changes the modality, it changes the structure of it. Number two, it also reduces, you don't have to worry about sulfation. If you take vitamin D orally and you have sulfation issues,
there it is, yeah.
you're going to build up a toxic level in the blood, but you're also going to create a deficiency at the tissue.
Interesting. Man, wow. Just so many correlations.
So in that situation, people walking around vitamin D toxic, even though that they're vitamin D deficient. And we're starting to see that now too.
Yeah. Okay.
That's
so based on that, do you have any questions? Anything come up for you?
Yeah, I'm just processing.
I know. So much
being deficient and having too much of it at the same time.
Wild. Yeah. So for me, it sounds, what I'm hearing is get more sun, everybody. Like, it's clear that's going to do more for you. You've talked about a microbiome test. What steps can people take before they would get to somebody like you if they're not feeling good and they want to work on something and they either don't have the money or access to the test right now to do that? Where could they start, Shawn?
One of the things is just go back to nature is the best solution.
Yes.
Go back to nature.
It's too simple, Shawn. It's too simple.
We have been, I always keep saying it goes back to the basics.
Okay.
I refer to it as foundational work.
All right.
Number one is you want to make sure your sleep is good.
Get to sleep.
Get to sleep on time. Get to 6-8 hours. One of the recommendations to all clients is get an Oura ring. Because that way you can measure your heart rate variability.
Yep.
And you measure your heart rate variability, it gives you an indication of how your stress response is. It gives you an indication of how your deep sleep is.
Yeah.
And when you do certain changes from some of the recommendations, either from your own research or what you read online or other avocations, you can actually track it.
So, remember I talked to you about my own HRV, how it switched slightly? I was pretty high when I came to you. I thought I had a great HRV, and then I started working with you, and it actually started to come down slightly. But you told me it was like a false positive.
Correct.
Speak to that, because some people might think they're doing it right, but might be in a similar place, because I thought I was doing all the things right.
This is also very synonymous with what I just found about EGFR, which is a metabolite from the kidneys that it gets affected through COVID. What happens is we're starting to see high levels of EGFR, which are up in 115, 120s, and my friend brought it to my attention. He's like, no, Shawn, that's an indication of, issues in regards to muscle breakdown.
Interesting.
So the EGFR actually increases when you're in a catabolic state.
Okay.
Even though it looks normal.
Yeah.
Now what happens with you is I sent you that article.
You did.
And it was just falsely elevated because your body was in sympathetic overdrive. Now your body's coming back to parasympathetic drive.
Yes, it is.
And that way it's coming down to more of a reality state.
Okay.
It's kind of like having false test. It's kind of like having a Lyme test that was false positive, but was really negative.
Interesting.
Or COVID test.
Okay.
That was false positive,
yeah.
but was actually negative.
Okay.
It was negative for another reason, cross-contamination or whatever. But because of the fact that you were high, and because you started working with Catherine,
Yep.
she brought your system back. She
Yeah.
chilled out your system.
Bingo.
And when it brought down, the thing about when you presented to me, I could sense the frustration.
Oh, yeah. I was frustrated.
But the thing is, did your performance change at the gym?
So it didn't go down. It stayed very similar. And I think as my body has started to, I can tell you now, my output is more than it was when I started with you. And I'm not doing more. I'm getting more out of what I'm doing.
Correct. So what happens from there is I think I referred to it was a transient state.
Yes.
I'm and Catherine kind of reverberated that back.
Yeah. Yeah. What's going on with John? Yeah.
Because I could see your emails. I'm
I was pissed. I didn't understand.
Was pissed off.
I didn't get. You said my heart rate variability should be high. It was, and now it's coming down. What the fuck? But when you sent me the article and helped me understand that I was in sympathetic overdrive, and that now that I'm coming back down and my body's kind of grounding from a parasympathetic place.
Correct.
Now you're seeing the actuality of where my heart rate was. And what I can tell you is it's starting to improve again. It's starting to go up to higher levels than it was when I came down.
Correct.
And my heart rate had gone up a little bit, but they're both shifting again. So I'm most likely, and it's been about September. So what's that? About 5 months of work that I've been putting in.
Well, the thing about that too is when the new cell, it takes 4 months for your cells to regenerate.
There you go.
The red blood cells to regenerate.
Okay.
So to see any actually transition, once you get there, then it's going to take another 4 months to solidify. So you're seeing the transition, then to get this stability and solidification to where it solidifies and becomes permanent.
Yeah.
Same thing with thyroid. People get so upset because they're on thyroid medication. They get the benefits, or testosterone. They get the benefits, but they don't understand that they've been that way for so long.
Right.
That you have to heal the tissue. And the tissue for some of my thyroid people can take up to 2 years to heal because they've been thyroid low for so long.
Wow. Right.
and they just don't know about it.
Yeah.
Or the fact is they're being improperly medicated. A friend of mine's daughter, when I looked at her testing results, I'm like, these tests, you're on thyroid medication? It's like, yeah. I'm like, when are you taking it? Well, I'm taking it. She was taking the thyroid medicine before the test, but she was testing the normal range. I'm like, no. You want to see higher levels because of what the drug is actually doing to your body, because of what the thyroid is doing to your body. I want to see you at 4.1, 4.2, not 3.3 when you're taking it.
Right.
So if she was to get the blood work done again, since I've done this so many times, that 3.3 is more like a 2.5. So theoretically, she's still hypothyroid, but because of the fact she took the thyroid medicine because the doctors didn't tell her not to, they don't tell you that. How many people are running around there? Elderly people. My mom. I have her stop it. And ever since she's been doing that many, many moons ago, she's 89 years old and could put a 5,000-piece puzzle together in no time at all. She's also asking, is there anything that you need help me to do for your work? I mean, she's 89 years old. She's an old workhorse.
Go Mama Bean.
And
amazing.
The thing is it's always about getting the proper, accurate data. Okay? And it's the proper interpretation of the results.
Yes.
Despite, because I look at them like, this doesn't look right because you're on medication.
Yeah.
And that's when she told me, she's like, yeah, I take it before. And then because of the fact of her symptomology, I showed her, I went on 30 seconds, 10 seconds, thyroid disorders and, your current symptoms you're experiencing for how many years now, boom, there it was. But instead, they were giving her a medication because of the fact that she had lack of concentration. So they were supplementing a medication for an actuality of a pathology of a low thyroid problem. And we see this all the time. And then I explained to her, I showed her the science saying, hey, the thyroid controls these neurotransmitters. These neurotransmitters are associated with your current condition. And by addressing the thyroid, we'll be able to taper you off and get you where you want to get to. Plus, being a workaholic, it will help you be able to build muscle and also get to where your goals are.
Yeah.
So, since working with me, what have you seen?
Well, how do you mean?
In your physique, in your mood, or let's rephrase that, with working with Catherine and I.
Yeah.
What synergy have you found that your Oura Ring was actual scientific validation?
Exactly. So, and that's where working with a practitioner, somebody who looked at my actual data and everything underneath, right? So look, you took in the whole picture. I didn't just come to you and say, you told me to get my heart rate variability higher, but it was, and then I came to you and it's starting to come down. You looked at everything. And then when I brought that to you, you were like, well, it was because you were in sympathetic overdrive. You had an answer for me. So for me, like, I thought I was doing a lot right. And my test actually, and you said it, you're like, John, you actually were doing a lot right. And there's also maybe the mold toxicity that you might have been exposed to as a young gentleman that hasn't expressed itself, but because I think my saturated fats were high, you said that could be part of why those are getting high in order to kind of keep it from expressing.
Correct.
Right? So if I had not had that information, I wouldn't know that basically my body internally was fighting itself, pushing me into an overdrive. Yeah, see, that's what I got from understanding and bringing that back to you. And then working with Catherine, both of you, the synergy, she has helped me understand how the nervous system works, being upregulated or overdrive all the time, the symptoms or the behaviors I might have as a result of that. My life was there for a long time. So when I brought that to her and she started explaining to me, I was basically living in like upregulation most of the time. I was never really grounding and healing.
Correct.
And now I am. And so to the point of, I'm not working out. I'm actually working out less. Results are the same or more. My sleep is getting better. I haven't added a ton of muscle, but my strength levels have not plummeted or fallen. They're right where they were. And he sees me a lot, so he gets to see the work that I put in. It's not less intense, but I'm not having to do extra stuff, lots of extra cardio. I'm staying lean, all of those kind of things. So understanding my nervous system and how to speak to that and ground myself when I'm feeling upregulated, and then bringing that to my workout and my work. Everybody here in the last 4 to 6 months has been like, what are you doing? He brought it to me. Yeah. He's like, John, people are noticing that you're different. Yeah. And at first I was like, what? Like, what?
I noticed it myself, just like the first time I really noticed it was while watching a podcast that he had done. And some of the early podcasts, like you met his mom through the first podcast before. So a lot of the early podcasts had MJ and his sister, and they were airing out a lot of stuff for a long time. Like it was some pretty heavy stuff. And I noticed, I'm very keen on behavior. So I noticed snap, like that kind of like he would like jump, snap back at certain things and things like that. And then some time went on, and I know he was working with you at that time. He was working with Catherine because we had discussed it a lot. And like I was watching one of the podcasts, and I noticed someone said something, and John just was like, "So okay," and just like it was a
more natural.
Yes, just instead of a quick snap back, it was like, oh. So what you're saying is like, and it has only increased since that point. Like I've noticed it several times in several different places. Like, not as many people have direct access to like for each other. Like we see each other a lot. We do this every day pretty much. And I get to see the inside, like under the hood, if you will, of that a lot. And, I know for sure that everything has come down a couple of notches. Like there's not that level of intensity of like, what's going on here? It's like
on guard.
Yep. Bingo.
In that, that like ready to like, that snippy snappiness, like that happens, like it, and like, oh, hey, and I say it when I see it. I'm like, hey, I noticed that you're, a few months ago, if that would have happened, you would have responded most likely like this. And now you're not. So just so it's there. Like, so that's, for sure.
And when you have other people witnessing this, that's testimonial to what Catherine and I synergistically
absolutely
are able to accomplish.
Agreed.
100%. As soon as I say it, I'd be like, it's due to my work with Shawn and Catherine. Like, that's what I'm working on. This is the stuff I'm working on. Like, and it's always that. It's like, hey, this is the stuff I'm working on.
You know where it showed up the most is with my dog. I have a pit bull mix, Staffy, so she's already sort of like forward leaning. Pit bulls, they're not inherently aggressive. They just have drive. And when I would get upregulated, she would go up with me.
Oh yeah.
Right. So I'd get upset. She would like start jumping up, get upset, start barking a little bit. And it then, because if I was trying to talk to my partner, I'd get a little, and she would go up there with us. And I started to notice, okay, like she's reacting to me, and it's creating stress between me and my partner and me and her. And so Catherine, when she helped me understand how to start grounding, and then I started doing that, and then I would come back and I'd be with my dog. And I learned, even if I was angry or upset or something, I didn't go up and I didn't stay on guard. And her reaction started to change around me. That's how I noticed. And I can't verbally communicate with her. Not with words, just energetically.
Right. Oh, absolutely. I mean, that dog's going to pick up on that.
Everything.
They're going to smell your fear. They smell you. That's why as soon as you show a dog fear, you're done.
Yeah.
It's going to jump all over you.
Yeah.
But if you show it's who's boss,
yes,
and you respect it,
yes,
it's going to bow down.
That's what I'm seeing. Basically that.
She does that now.
She sits when she's asked. She rolls over on her belly. She is much easier to manage while we're doing our things. And I know she had a rough start like I did. And so what I've found really is more like, as I regulate, it brings her down. We both heal. Our relationship gets better. And so does my relationship with everybody outside of that circle, if that makes sense.
From the first time I talked, you look more vibrant. There's a glow about you that, that was a different aura.
Remember I asked you about dark eye circles?
Yeah.
And what'd you tell me? Topical vitamin E. And I've been using it for whatever. Like I've even said it the other day. We did a podcast with somebody else, and I was looking at it, and I was like,
"Hey, my eye circles look good."
Eye circles are different.
Yeah.
And he was like, "Oh, thanks, Shawn." Like it was just, dude, he knew. And like,
Right.
so yes, I feel like my skin is healthier. I feel alive in a way that I haven't. I feel lighter.
Right.
Does that make, yeah.
Well, the lightness is also coming from that emotional
Offloading,
offloading
yeah,
and
offloading
that
shit.
control
Yeah.
that you have.
Yeah.
And then what Catherine is doing is Catherine's put you into, I feel safe.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
It's all about safety.
Yep.
If you're, and this is a podcast that I did, or something that I did with Catherine, it was all about feeling safe.
Yeah.
And when a person feels safe, they can accomplish anything. When they have negative energy around them, whether it's from a dog that's a pain in the backside or a kid that's a pain in the backside, you have to learn to regulate that. Okay? And that's where Catherine does a wonderful job of regulation.
Catherine, amazing. Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. That is some of the best work that I have ever decided to do on myself, but I didn't know that I needed it until I started this podcast, and exactly what he said. I noticed the reactive stuff and I wanted to start working on it. And as soon as I kind of came conscious of I wanted to start working on it, you put out a post saying, "Hey, I want to get on people's podcasts and start talking about the things that are interesting." And I was like, I've been following him for a while. He talks about really interesting things that are just left of center, and I really like that, and not in a weird, wacky way, but in a, okay, here's the box, and I'm going to look outside of it too. And you, for whatever reason, the way that you talk and your technical expertise, I resonated with that. And you spoke in a way where I was like, well, let me see what he says. And I knew who you were, but you probably didn't know who I was at the time. And I was like, all right, well, he's asking for podcasts. I'm going to put it out there. And so when you came on and started talking about environmental toxicity and inflammation and all of these things, I was like, he was here for me today. Mm-hmm. Yes, for my mom, and we're going to work to her. She's starting to see changes in me too.
Absolutely.
So my mom is seeing it. My sister is seeing it. My dog is seeing it. My partner is seeing it. What I know, and you talk about the safe space here for our clients, they might be going all through whatever out there. When they come here, guess who the grounding forces are?
Right.
We're the regulators.
Correct. When you're upregulated, they're going to be upregulated. They're not going to get. Could that be one of the reasons why that they may be not? You had a few clients that were being resistant for whatever reason.
Yes. Some of it is inside their own world, sure. Some of it was definitely, I was not as approachable, not as able to connect energetically, right? And they might have felt like, I trust him, but there's something keeping me all the way from him.
Sure.
And if you look right behind you, my goal for the last 3 to 6 months is to be more approachable. That's it. Sure, I can work out, get bigger muscles, whatever. I want people to come to me, if they come to me, when they come to me, to feel so damn safe.
Correct.
They can almost tell me anything, and they don't know why. Because the safety that they feel is like, oh my gosh, this feeling is amazing. Great. Now that you're here, let's do that hard work that we need to get done. Because now you're regulated, and we can add some intensity, which I understand.
So in that scenario, the combination actually has helped your clients as well.
It's helped everybody around me, Shawn.
That's the most important thing. And it really didn't take a lot.
No, not really.
And you probably would have gone to functional medicine doctor, at a functional medicine doctor, and probably wouldn't have been nowhere near
just a little bit
where you would be now.
I tend to believe and agree with you. I wasn't somebody, let me just try this and try this and try this. What I started to really realize, was when I started to listen to what was really going on under my hood. What did I need? And I started speaking to that. It started showing up. And that's how I know that. And then I feel this much better. It's like a reinforcement of that's the way that I do things now.
Right.
Not try a bunch of stuff, but like, okay, give myself safety.
Correct.
Take a step back. John, what does your body need? What do you need right now? And if you listen long enough, something will come up. A thought will creep and you'll be like, you need to work on this or go there. Or ask Shawn. Like there was things where I was like, why is my heart rate variability changing? I don't get it. Okay, don't get frustrated, ask Shawn.
Or instead of going online.
Well, right. Just don't upregulate it.
Don't upregulate it. And that's the thing I tell my clients. Some of my clients get the best results when they go on a social media holiday.
Whoo. Hey, you hear that? Social media holiday, y'all.
So
after you listen to the podcast, of course.
Listen to the podcast, of course.
Getting your UV rays.
You can get your UV rays. So actually, Catherine's leaving for the beach and
Mexico,
and
I know. I'm so excited for her.
I'm like, oh yeah, damn you. But she's going down to that blue belt. The blue zone.
The blue zone, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And it's going to be interesting to see how she comes back.
Yeah, I know she's had some harder things recently, whatever in her life, and I'm excited for her because I know she's been talking about it for a while, and yeah, I want to see what comes out of that for her for sure. Yeah, absolutely. Do you have any questions? Anything you want to?
Not at the moment. I'm processing a lot of things. I have a ton of notes here. You know what? I do have a question. You talked a lot about thyroid function and that kind of stuff. Can you talk a little bit to what someone could do for themselves if they found themselves in a position where they got a thyroid removed for whatever situation? I have someone in my life who has recently had that happen through an expression of some things that came up, and it happened really fast. It was like oh yeah, we're doing this, boom, 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 and it was done. And everyone was like, wait, hold on a second.
Physically taken out, or did they burn it out?
No, it was physically removed.
Okay. The partial or entire?
Entire.
Okay. So in that standpoint, what you have to do is it's got to be properly medicated.
Right.
100%. Now, what can be done is proper management of the testing results. Through traditional medicine, what they'll do is they'll look at maybe 2 or 3 different things called TSH, T4, and they'll maybe check TGAB, but not TPO.
Okay.
So what they're doing is they're missing the entire piece of the puzzle, which is the T4 converts into what's called T3. T3 is the actually active form of the thyroid. So oftentimes they'll be given Levoxyl, or they'll be given Synthroid, or just T4 only. A lot of times what we find is due to the liver imbalances, the gut microbiome actually makes up 33% of the T3.
Okay.
And you actually have to have proper sulfation for the T3 to actually activate.
Okay.
So there's liver imbalances. The T4 is going to be high and the T3 is going to be low. The other factor is you have to measure the T4, T3, free T3, and free T4. Because if you just look at the total, you're looking at the pizza. You're not looking at the pepperoni on the pizza.
I gotcha.
Okay?
That's a great analogy.
So same thing with testosterone. You look at total testosterone, you're looking at the pizza. You look at the SHBG, you're looking at how much pizza's on the pepperoni.
Right.
The lower the SHBG, the more pepperoni's on the pizza.
Right.
The higher the SHBG, the lower the pepperoni's on people.
Gotcha.
Okay? But again, she had a structural imbalance. For whatever reason it happened, she has it taken out. Proper management of that would be essential.
Right.
Because otherwise she can gain weight, she can have neurological problems, and they'll come back and say, oh, your T4 is in normal range. But they won't look at the free T3, they won't look at the free T4, they won't look at the reverse T3, they won't look at the TPO, TGAB, they don't look at the thorophenol. So in those situations, what I would encourage you to do is to go to the laboratory called BLT and get a full thyroid panel and get their comprehensive done. I believe it's $229 now versus what it was, but that is the primary panel that we ran on you.
Right, okay.
Yep. But it was enough to identify, and don't have her take the medicine before taking the thyroid test. Okay?
Smart.
Because that way, if it comes back,
Right, just what we were just talking about a little bit ago.
it's going to be false.
Yeah.
So now that you have that information, that person who would be just a regular person who didn't have this information would be going through life. How old are they?
31.
So their life is just beginning.
Yeah.
So they could have a higher potential with not being properly managed to where they could have depression, anxiety, gallbladder problems. They could have weight gain. They could have insulin resistance.
Right.
They could have increased dysbiosis, which is bad bacteria overriding the good bacteria.
Yeah.
They could have small bacteria overgrowth because they have gut motility issues. And then if you have gut motility issues, what happens is this came interesting to me one day, and it made sense. If you have slow gut motility, the carbohydrates sit in the small intestinal tract, and what happens is they should be moving through at about 10 miles an hour. They might be moving through at 2 or 3 miles an hour. So what happens is not only do the bad bacteria get a hold of them, but also your insulin starts pumping.
Right. Trying to process them.
Trying to process it.
Yeah.
So you actually end up with type 2 diabetes over time because of the low thyroid.
Gotcha.
And then the type 2 diabetes feeds back into the insulin resistance. And then
Feedback loop.
the feedback loop. And then if her thyroid's not right, she's not going to be able to get her gallbladder because you need T3 to activate the gallbladder to release the bile to help break down the fats. So then she's going to end up with fat absorption issues or hyperlipidemia.
Right.
Go into cardiovascular disease. So just from not properly addressing the thyroid, and then also you get the thyroid regulated and it's like she feels good and all of a sudden she feels like crap, then you want to think about, hey, you've got enough gas in the engine, but your transmission can't handle the power.
Right.
So then you start to look at the adrenals. And then usually the adrenals will go low over time. And oftentimes they always tell you, number one rule is when you look on Synthroid, it says, please evaluate for adrenal insufficiency first. Okay? So, and it says it right on the insert.
Yeah.
Rule out adrenal insufficiency before giving thyroid medication. That is not done.
Right. It's just
Because-
like, here you go, take this.
Because the thyroid and the adrenals are like yin and yang.
Right.
And they're very difficult to balance. And a lot of times people start feeling amazing on thyroid, then they start to feel like, oh, I'm going to depress this, that, when it's really the adrenals that are taxed because you're running the engine. And then you shift gears, constantly shifting gears, and your transmission is just going to stall.
Right.
So in that scenario, then also there could be hidden mitochondrial dysfunction as a result. So the two things that I see affecting thyroid are mitochondrial dysfunction, adrenal insufficiency, and hormones in females, estrogen dominance. Estrogen binds to the thyroid receptor sites, blocks it. Glyphosates does the same thing.
Okay.
Glyphosates will bind to it. Estrogen will bind to it. Well, that's why it's called thyroid binding globulin goes up when you have estrogen dominance because it binds onto it. It's just like SHBG.
Right.
Okay? So in that standpoint, you have to address, there's other environmental toxins.
Right.
So the old thing I always recommend, address what is the problem because it's a life, life depends, can't live without the thyroid.
Right.
Okay? Normally they get put on Synthroid. Replacement for thyroid is anywhere between 200 to 300 micrograms for full thyroid. Okay? But what they'll do is they'll look at the T4 only.
Okay.
Now they look at the T4, T3, great. But then you have to, your T4 could be up here and your T3 be down here, but you're still symptoms of hypothyroidism. Okay? But then in that standpoint, you have depression. Go see a psychiatrist. That's the point that I wanted to make.
Yeah, no, and
because
that's
going back to
what
what
I'm
I was
interested
talking,
in, yeah.
because what I was going back to is with that one case was because of the condition they were dealing with, underlying thyroid was the potential root cause. So if the person's experiencing brain fog or inability, and their T4 is up here, T3 is down here, you got to get that T3 up. And there's ways that you can do that when it comes time. So go with what has been done now.
Yeah.
Get the blood work done. See where things are at, so that that poor person, when they're 32, 33, that they're they probably want to have kids too.
Right.
So that thyroid is going to be a major player in conception.
Right.
Because if you're low on thyroid, the other thing too is iodine. Okay? Because iodine makes the thyroid work more, and a lot of people that are iodine deficient are having kids that have lesser IQs because iodine deficiency causes cretinism, which is basically almost similar to autism.
Oh, jeez.
There's actually a lot of documentation showing how cretinism and autism are highly linked together.
Wow. Okay.
And that all comes from iodine deficiencies. That's why people do the ZRT testing.
Oh, and you have me on iodine.
Exactly. Because you were deficient.
That's right.
And you had no idea that you were.
No, none.
And you just needed just a little bit.
Drop a day, maybe two.
Drop a day, maybe two. And
With my taurine. With my taurine.
With your taurine. And that helps
It does.
bring everything back. And it's not, you don't have to take 50 milligrams of iodoral, which is,
No.
you take the right form, right dosage, use the clinical testing to help guide you, and you reduce side effects, you get the therapeutic output, and everybody's nice and happy.
Right.
It's not, go to, again, I have this love-hate relationship with functional medicine.
Sure.
But their philosophies have to change. They're doing way too much testing. They don't know how to interpret the results. I mean, I got to go through a case that's got 26 pages of 26 different tests.
Right.
And over the last 6 months, and they're still feeling like crap.
Right.
And I'm like, well, they didn't do this. I said, what about the gut test? Well, they didn't do the gut test. I said, what? With your gastrointestinal problems, they didn't do a gut test? Come on.
It's not included in the 26
It's
different
not
tests?
included because they went to a mold specialist. They were focusing so much on mold, but I have to understand when you're dealing with mold, it begins in the gut because that's how your body detoxifies it. It could colonize, yes, but still, it's all broken down in the GI tract. And if your GI tract is not at the par, like I said, going to Starbucks, you're vulnerable to mycotoxins. Organic is great, but they don't put fungicides on the thing, on foods.
Right.
So you're going to be more vulnerable to mold on like nuts and stuff like that. That's why I don't eat a lot of nuts. Okay, Brazil nuts are fine, but when you start, they've been in the packages. You don't know about moisture, so forth. Because I know personally that I had quinoa chips, and my stomach had not been right since then. And they're organic, but the only grain that I can eat is like white rice.
Interesting. Okay.
That tends to burn easy in my body. But if I eat the harder grains like quinoa or oatmeal or things along those lines, my body doesn't like those.
Okay.
Okay? That's just me.
Sure.
Because being mold toxic. Plus, a lot of the problems that I had when I got mold toxic actually were from parasites and led into mold. And, I'm still repairing my GI tract, which I'm actually working on clinical studies on in regards to reversing a lot of the issues with long haulers.
You've been talking about it, yep.
With the spike protein and how that metabolism and mechanism inside the gut, once you work on a certain pathway, that closes those gap junctions, reduces neural inflammation, reduces gene expression. All the pro-inflammatory cytokines go through the same pathway. So what I basically did was I mapped out all the pro-inflammatory cytokines. I looked at all the integration of the pathways, and they intersect. And what happens is, if you focus on this, you don't have to do this. Okay? And when you focus on this, you theoretically may be able to not need a fecal implant.
Oh, geez. Okay.
Because what you're doing is you're rebooting the GI tract from the inside out. And when you do that, that protects you from the mold. That protects you from the yeast and the fungus
Okay.
itself. It also closes those gap junctions, reduces the neural inflammation, reboots the vagus nerve. So that one pathway, which unfortunately due to NDAs I can't describe, but once we're focusing on it, and we have right now 2 reported feedbacks that have had mold, Lyme, COVID, barely could function. They now are back to 90% of what they were before COVID and everything else. And actually, one of them is a medical doctor. So once these clinicals are done, we're going to take this to the IRC and get funding
Yep.
for further studies
Yeah.
to get grants.
Interesting.
Right now, I'm working my way to RFK because that same mechanism is actually one of the mechanisms that I have found to be 80% probable cause or a potential mechanism. We can't say actual, but potential mechanism with a high probability for autism. And just think, in layman's terms, this is going to make MTHFR look like a walk in the park.
What is MTHR?
MTHFR
MTHFR.
is the blood test that everybody's getting for the gene expression.
Got it.
For the motherfucker gene.
The motherfucker gene. Okay, I got. Okay.
So,
What is a long hauler, Shawn? I've heard the term. I want people to understand what it is. Is that people that have gotten COVID and their symptoms have not gone away?
correct.
Okay.
And what we're starting to see is we're starting to see, and I said this multiple times, one of my most astute colleagues and well-respected doctor, they all agreed, show me the data in 5 years.
Okay.
We're at that point now.
Yep.
And this is where I said,
You've been posting about that a lot lately. I've seen a few of those
fallout has
things.
just begun, and it's now that everything's over. People think that their immune systems are free, but now what's been happening is we're coming into wintertime. Our immune systems are starting to go. Now we're starting to see things start to resurface now because lack of sun and being indoors and many other factors. But what's happening is as COVID starts to express, it's opening Pandora's box, which means it's turning on genes that were dormant.
Okay.
And now being active, whatever they may be.
Yeah.
And it's increasing. I have multiple cases to where I have pre-COVID and after COVID. I'm seeing an increase in infections, expression of infections and Lyme, co-infections. I'm seeing cases of mold that have been dormant. And I said, hey, you've been exposed to mold? Yeah, about 15 years ago. I said, well, guess what?
It's coming.
It's coming back.
Yeah.
Because he's like, oh my God, my symptoms are the same. I'm like, yeah, they are.
Yeah.
That's where the intersection, and COVID damages the gut, so that way your bifido drop down, so you can't process GABA. You can't produce a lot of the excitatory neurotransmitters, which are the gas pedals. They can't be converted into the braking system because bifido converts glutamate, which is the excitatory, into GABA, which is the calming. And what happens is the body tries to compensate again, and by doing so, it raises up a pathogenic one. Because when I look on the blood test, I'm like, or when I look on the stool sample test, I'm like, all right, I know when I see this marker, I know bifido is down. Again, it's a compensation mechanism. So there's a lot of, when you're dealing with long hauler, it's a very, very rocky road for a lot of people, but there are definitely helps. And the other thing I want to bring into attention is being in the center that I was in just a few days ago, the emphasis that I saw in a mold case was a person that was highly excitatory, in fear mode, not feeling safe.
Yep.
We put her through a lymphatic treatment. She came down literally afterwards and she said to me, this is the best I ever felt. So this goes back to one of the systems that we overlook, which is the lymphatic system. The lymphatic system, because if your lymphatic system's clogged, it's going to back up the liver, it's going to back up the liver, kidney, colon.
All the things.
So, skin brushing, rebounding, going through lymphatic drainage. Okay. I also had the opportunity to use a device called the Beamer, which is known as PMF.
PMF.
PMF is a mechanism by which it uses bioresidency, energetics to help to heal at the cellular level.
Oh.
And it's actually technology that's inside the astronaut suits that they utilize, because they found that using that technology actually maintains bone density.
So they don't lose it when they're in
They don't lose
space.
it in space.
In space, exactly.
Interesting.
Wow.
But what it also does is it also helps to regenerate and increase stem cell production. Because in my future house, I'm going to have a hyperbaric chamber.
Ooh.
Because when I started to look at the chemistry and the synergy between the two and what it was doing, the lady that I was up there with, she had Lyme. She did, I think it was 20 dives and went to 40 dives. She literally looked 15 years, from when she was to 40 dives, she looked 15 years younger. Why? Hyperbarics, number one, actually it tightens your skin. It also increases, the physiology creates the stem cells, and it also increases growth hormone.
Ooh.
Hello.
Jackie, we're getting a hyperbaric chamber.
I would definitely get a hyperbaric chamber. And when you combine that with the Beamer, you've got the best. And the lady that was on the Beamer, but from here up, she was 68 years old. But from here up, she looked like she was 50. Because and that's all she was using. And she even said, Shawn, she make a good point. She goes, I went back to my 50th year reunion, and people were just like, what are you doing?
Right.
You know? And because I'm all in about I don't like to use the word anti-aging. I'm looking at the word health span.
Yeah, I like that.
Health span is living a healthy life, but maybe not up to 100 years old.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I'd rather live to 90 and be able to perform as a male should be and be able to do everything it's supposed to be, rather than live to 100 in a home.
Yeah.
I'm like, just put a bullet in my head.
I want to be functional.
I want to be functional.
Right.
Exactly. I don't want to be a vegetable.
Yeah.
So the hyperbaric chamber was a real eye-opener, because it all depends upon what ones you get. They can range up to like $5,000 up to like $50,000.
Sure.
You know,
I'm coming to you when I do it, and I'm going to ask you for your recommendation.
The $50,000 one, of course.
Jeremy, do you have any follow-up questions here for Shawn?
No, I
any
think
final statements?
We have covered so much stuff.
Did this
today.
help you with the thyroid, though?
Absolutely.
Or what
yes.
to do?
No, I was looking for just an avenue.
Why would you want a person to suffer when there's no need to?
I don't.
And that's
Yeah.
what being proactive is.
Yeah.
And that's why you have to cover the gamut.
Yeah.
Because you don't cover the gamut, you're not. I mean, I would even do an iodine. I would do it with the ZRT test with her too.
Yeah.
Okay. Because the
Write
ZRT
it
test
down,
can
too.
actually, the iodine test can actually help her out tremendously.
Amazing.
No, and I appreciate all of that stuff. We talked about so much stuff, and we could probably pick any one of these things and have another 2-hour conversation about it too.
Easily.
But I think that's like we've given everyone quite a bit to process here.
So I'm going to finish up. I'm going to wrap this thing up. I got a fun little two-parter here, I think. You mentioned something that you said you're working your way to RFK. I'm
a few steps down. Some of the people that I'm working with right now are just underneath of him.
Great.
And they're more open-minded. So once I get this data, and then I actually may bring her into her team, because it's good to have a set of eyes, but also the connections to have on board.
Yeah.
Because once we get this data, once everything's solidified and get everything down and run the IRCs, get everything identified, it's going to be a huge game changer.
If you could give him a message right now, what would it be if he's watching?
RFK, I really appreciate what you're doing out there to keep us safe. I'm also doing my part in regards to helping prevent autism, because I have autism myself. I've been diagnosed with Asperger's for many years, and I've lived the trauma that it can cause, but I've learned to turn a curse into a blessing by sharing my information and by having my talents to help people with chronic health issues. But I'm working on a project that, if it is confirmed, it will be one of the most forward steps into prevention of autism through clinical testing with just a simple blood test. The data is there.
Everybody out there, including RFK, if you're listening, make sure that you listen to this podcast while you're in the morning and in the evening while we're walking around and getting our sun. And if you're not going to listen to the podcast, Shawn said he listens to music sometimes. So my fun final question for Shawn would be, Shawn, if you could see any band, any person, any musical act, alive or dead, who would be your headliner and who would be your opening act?
Ooh, that's a great question. That's a great question. One of my favorite bands was Journey.
Okay.
And then probably Van Halen.
There it is.
Original Van Halen, of course.
Original
David
Van
Lee
Halen.
Roth.
Exactly.
Van Halen. Yes.
So there it is, everybody. Make sure you listen to this podcast. Check out Shawn Bean, the metabolic detective, Matrix Health and Wellness. Check out Catherine Watkins, polyvagal theorist and specialist. Check out Jeremy Palmer.
We'll have some links for all this stuff in the
Shawn,
descriptions
thank you
below.
so much for everything you do for my personal help, for my mom, which I know you're going to assist, and for everybody out there, including RFK and all the people downstream of that. Dude, thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's been my pleasure.
My friend.
Thank you.
So good.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, that's really appreciated. Yeah.
Thank you for making it this far in our podcast. I am not okay, and that's why I created www.iamnotok.com. It's a space where we can go to be seen, to be heard, and to not be judged. Everybody needs that. Everybody wants that. Here is our opportunity to have that. If you are ready to have your story heard, please go to www.iamnotok.com/contact, CONTACT, and fill out our form to sit right here across from me as a guest on our podcast. And if you're not ready to be a guest and tell your story live, but you are ready to start telling the truth, even if just to yourself, then please grab our free Speaking Your Truth guide, www.iamnotok.com/truth. We look forward to seeing you on the inside. Be well.